Yo, I'm Yovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. I just got back from FedExForum where the Lakers beat the Memphis Grizzlies 136 to 124 without Anthony Davis to improve to 41 and 32 on the season. The Lakers have won 5 straight games for the first time this season and are playing arguably their best basketball of the season at the most crucial point of the season. They started this East Coast road trip 2-0, beating Milwaukee without LeBron, coming back from down 19 in the fourth quarter, and then now beating Memphis without AD, which honestly, it's not more impressive than the Milwaukee win. The Milwaukee win exists in its own tier just because of the caliber of opponent and the context of the game. LA being down with 19 points, 8 minutes left, no LeBron. But LA had actually been worse without Anthony Davis this season than without LeBron. They entered this game 1-3 without AD and 6-4 without LeBron. And they had only overlapped in terms of missing the same game one time. It was that Boston game. So that was the one win. So really in games that AD missed that LeBron played in, the Lakers were actually 0-3 this season. So this was their first win with LeBron and no Anthony Davis this season. And considering that this group was coming off an emotional double overtime win, one of their best wins of the season, it seemed inevitable that there would be some type of letdown. Couple in no Anthony Davis and no real backline interior presence. And this was the recipe for a trap game, for a disappointing loss that diffused some of the Lakers' momentum. But they overcame that, and they really dominated the Grizzlies for the most part for most of this game. LA had it was basically whenever the starters, or at least a few starters, were on the floor, LA was in pretty good shape. This was a weird game because if you go quarter by quarter, each quarter was relatively close. Like LA outscored Memphis by 1 in the first, by 7 in the second, by 2 in the third, and by 2 in the fourth. But LA's largest lead of the game was 27 points. And if you look at some of the numbers for the starters, Rui was plus 35 in 36 minutes. LeBron was plus 33 in 35 minutes. And Austin was plus 31 in 35 minutes. So you look at that, and that means, let's just take Rui at plus 35. Well, LA won by 12. So quick math. LA was outscored by 23 points in the 12 minutes that Rui was off the floor. So the bench got absolutely waxed at various points. Like Spencer Dinwiddie was a minus 11 in 25 minutes. Cam Reddish was minus 17 in 10 minutes. That was a team worst mark. Harry Giles III was outscored by 12 in his 5 minutes. And that was originally by 10. Like that's where the game got out of hand, was Harry Giles came in between the end of the first quarter and the beginning of the second quarter. And the Lakers got completely thrashed during that stretch, and Harry Giles didn't play again until the game was decided late. Quickly, I want to apologize for the video quality on my last post-game reaction show. I'm not quite sure what happened, but parts of the video were a bit glitchy, and I didn't notice that until I was editing it afterwards and didn't have the time to go back and re-record basically the whole video. So I put a disclaimer there, but I appreciate those people who still watched it, still engaged with it, and still enjoyed it. And the audio was fine. And if the audio wasn't fine, I either wouldn't have posted it or would have just re-recorded it. But I try to hold myself to a certain standard and produce a certain level of quality, even when I'm on the road. I mean, I'm trying to give you guys the best content possible when I'm on the road. And I just wanted to quickly apologize again and say that I hope that doesn't happen again. If it does, I got to figure something out. But I think it was mainly a Wi-Fi thing. That was my best read on it, because I've never had that happen at home or in any other hotel. All right, so some important stat lines from tonight. Rui Hachimura had 32 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks. This was Rui's second double-double of the season and second consecutive double-double, because his first double-double of the season, almost a triple-double there. We'll get to the triple-double after this. But his first double-double came in the Milwaukee game. So back-to-back double-doubles for Rui. He played incredible tonight. He scored 32 points on 11 of 14 shooting, 7 of 8 from the three-point line, and 3 of 4 on free throws. I don't want to spoil my Rui takeaway. That's going to be my first takeaway. So I'm not going to touch on him too much right now. Just laying out the stat line. LeBron had his 4th triple-double of the season, 23 points, 14 rebounds, and 12 assists. Did take a hard spill a couple times, had a moment where it looked like he might have injured his groin or his hip, just walked it off, as LeBron tends to do. He's a cyborg still in year 21, age 39. And he really, it was the most casual triple-double. He was battling on the glass. He led the team in rebounding, and he did lead the team in assists as well. But it felt like, didn't make a three-pointer, 7-11 at the free throw line. So, he was getting downhill. He was getting at the rim, and he was upset several times about non-calls, and times he felt that there was a lot of contact, and he didn't go to the free throw line. So he felt like this could have been 15, 18 free throws. But as a whole, Lakers attempted 35. So it's tough to complain when you're taking 16 more free throws than your opponent. Another good free throw shooting night for LA, 28 of 35 overall. So that's 80%. Then Jaxson Hayes stepping in as the starting center, 14 points and 7 rebounds. Also had a block and a steal, playing really high level basketball. I will be touching on him as well. Austin Reeves had 13 points and 11 assists. Struggled a bit offensively in terms of just his efficiency. Was just 4 for 13 from the floor, but was 5 for 5 from the free throw line. Again, 11 assists, was second on the team. The only other guy in double figures. And this was arguably Austin's best passing game of the season, at least definitely in the conversation. But to me, just some of the high level reads and just his control over the offense was really impressive. And then D'Angelo Russell had 23 points and 4 assists, hit 5 threes. So Rui's 3-point night kind of overshadowed D'Lo's, but D'Lo also got hot from beyond the arc. And for some reason, Memphis was playing drop coverage against him, and he buried a few threes against that coverage. And then they also lost him in transition several times, and he shook loose and drilled a few threes there. And then off the bench, Taurean Prince had 15 points, made 3 threes, and Spencer Dinwiddie had 14 points, also made 3 threes. As a team, LA shot 54%. They made 18 of their 33 threes, 54.5%. So they actually shot better on threes than they did overall. They were shooting the bleep out of the ball for most of this game. Only 15 turnovers in comparison with 31 assists on their 45 made field goals. With that said, let's get into our 3 takeaways. Takeaway number 1 is this version of Rui Hachimura raises the Lakers' ceiling. And look, I'm not saying he's going to post 32 and 10 on a nightly basis or even again this season necessarily with Anthony Davis back in the lineup. As Darvin Ham said tonight, in most cases with that starting group, Rui is the 4th, if not the 5th option. And that, of course, will shift depending on the lineup. But for the most part, Rui is often, at best, the 3rd option behind some combination of LeBron, AD, Austin, and D'Lo. And that's fine, because if you go back and look at Rui's shots tonight, and particularly his makes, it was all catch and shoot, catching on the weak side and attacking closeouts for pull-up jumpers, cutting into space. He had a beautiful basket cut across the lane where LeBron found him for a dunk. And it's just like the simple stuff of, there was not a lot of ISO post-ups, Rui trying to get his own. It was a lot of breaking down the Grizzlies defense. They chose to play off Rui for whatever reason. And similar to the way that other players have burned the Lakers, Rui burned the Grizzlies tonight. And it was reminiscent of the Dante Exum performance, or earlier in the season, Marcus Smart with this very Grizzlies team, and several other players who burned the Lakers when the game plan was to play off of them. The Grizzlies chose to play off Rui Hachimura. Santi Aldama was the primary culprit of just basically ignoring Rui at the 3-point line. But Jaren Jackson Jr. also had several breakdowns in terms of just leaving Rui and Rui getting open looks. So the Grizzlies' game plan was to make Rui Hachimura beat them, and he did. And it was interesting because entering the game, Rui's a low volume 3-point shooter, but he is shooting 40% on threes this season. And I think once he made a few, you would think the Grizzlies would have countered, but it really was like shot 6 and shot 7 was when they finally started countering and putting a hand in his face. And at that point, he was in such a rhythm, as we've seen opponents do to the Lakers. Like Rui got in such a good rhythm that at that point, it didn't really matter. But I think Rui picking his spots and really playing off of his teammates more than looking to create his own shot or looking, again, to ISO, post up. Like, this is the version of Rui the Lakers need. And then also his work on the defensive glass in consecutive games, 14 points against the Bucks, 10 rebounds against the Grizzlies. And I went back and watched all 10 of his rebounds, and several of them were heavily contested rebounds where he was battling a Grizzly player and came up victorious with the rebound. So like, it wasn't just he was standing, like some of them were just him standing there, the ball ricochets and he, or caroms to him, he collects it and he gets the rebound. But several of them were, I'm battling my man, I'm boxing out, and this is a mano-a-mano thing, and I'm coming out with the board. And that's the version of Rui that the Lakers need. And it is pretty crazy that he's only had 2 double-digit rebounding efforts this season, and they've both been in the last couple of games. And part of that's been his role. If you go back through before he was a starter, Rui's minutes and role were inconsistent. It was one of my biggest gripes and many fans' biggest gripes with the way the rotation and lineups were managed this season. Rui, the Lakers invested a lot in him this past offseason and then chose for whatever reason not to play him as much as he should have. There were several injuries that he dealt with, and several times he was in and out of the lineup. But I think that's a bit of an excuse when looking at it objectively. And I've written about it multiple times and talked about it here on this podcast and this platform, that before Rui became the starter on February 3rd, there were 26 possible games for this current Lakers starting lineup to play together in, and they only played in 6 of them. And that's just inexcusable. And Darvin Ham was finally asked, do you wish you went to this starting lineup earlier in the season? And once again, he blamed injuries and became a bit defensive on it, when it was pretty clear that Taurean Prince should not have been the starter for the first 49 plus games. I mean, he started 49, he missed a few. So it was like 50 something games of the season that was not the answer at the 3. And the fact that Rui and Austin and D'Lo were all shuffling in and out. Rui never really started, but Austin and D'Lo were benched before Taurean, and at one point, all 3 of those guys were coming off the bench in late December. Like, it's one of those things that's a big mistake hanging over the Lakers season. And I have just looked it up. The Lakers are 20-10 with Rui in their starting lineup, and that includes before he became the full-time starter. But that's a .667 win percentage, which translates to 55 wins over the course of an 82-game season. So a 55-win pace puts the Lakers in the top 4 in the West. And maybe they don't continue to win at the exact same pace, but I think if Rui is a starter from day one, or at least starting from some point in December when it was clear that the Lakers' plan of Taurean at the 3 was just not working, I think we're looking at a team that has a playoff spot, even with the injuries to Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent and Christian Wood and Cam Reddish and Rui at various points and LeBron and AD. Like, all the injuries of the season, even if they stayed the same, and the minutes and roles on this team were just redistributed to better players and bigger lineups, I think this Lakers team is probably a 5 or 6 seed at a minimum right now. But the lesson here is Rui needs to continue to start, and there will be future matchups that test his defensive capabilities, that test him as a shooter. Rui has the post-up ISO skills in his bag. I know LeBron doesn't like that word, but I just don't think it's something that the Lakers need to go to as much. And it's also matchup based, where in this matchup, Memphis has a big front line. They start 3 guys 6'9" and bigger. So there wasn't necessarily that type of matchup for Rui to get deep seals and duck-ins and post-ups against smaller defenders. Like, if you're going to put a 6'4" guard on him, sure, you can run those actions and look to exploit that mismatch. But on just a given possession, I like Rui more as a finisher and as a guy that the Lakers are creating offense for, with LeBron, with AD, with Austin, and with D'Lo. And that version of Rui makes the Lakers even more difficult to match up with, just because of their collective size and physicality and defensive rebounding. And then on the other end, there's really nowhere to help off of. Takeaway number 2 is the Lakers need to take more threes. And This is a good problem to have because looking at the Lakers' yearly splits on the season, they are 7th in the league in terms of 3-point percentage. Since December, they are 4th. Since January, they are 3rd. And since February, they are 2nd. And then again in March, they are 2nd in terms of percentage. So this is a group that it's weird because on paper, they don't have necessarily that sharp shooter that you would associate. They don't have a Steph Curry, a prime Klay Thompson, even a guy like a Duncan Robinson. The one exception is D'Lo, who's been shooting the ball at that caliber of a level, and LeBron, who's also having a career year. But looking at the rest of the supporting cast, be it Austin or Torian or Rui, Spencer, AD, like you don't look at that cast of guys as this is a top 5 3-point percentage team in the league. But the Lakers are very smart and very patient with how they generate threes, and living at the paint and living at the rim and getting to the free throw line as often as they do forces defenses to collapse and give up something. And more often than not, that's going to be giving up things at the 3-point line. And when the Lakers are taking threes, they're being very selective with it, and they're generating high percentage, open, wide open, or semi-contested threes. And tonight, another hot shooting night again, 18 of 33, 54.5%. And if you look at that Milwaukee game, part of it was because they went to double overtime, but the Lakers attempted 44 threes in that game. And I think that should be more in line with the number of attempts they take on a nightly basis. 44 is on the higher end, so I'm not saying that, but I think this group should be closer to 35 to 43s instead of the low 30s or even high 20s that they're often in. Because during the stretch, despite them being a top 5 3-point team in terms of percentage over the last few months, they've still remained a bottom 5 3-point shooting team in terms of attempts. And that's whether you go by per game or per 100 possessions, per possession, however you want to slice it. The Lakers are still a very low volume 3-point shooting team. And part of that is because they're so good at getting downhill. They're so good at getting to the rim. They draw so many fouls and so many free throws that it's hard to complain with this offense, because this offense has been firing at such a high level for months now. But as things start to tighten up in the playoffs and the Lakers start to get not as many calls and the games are just more physical and the refs let teams play through things, I think finding ways to generate more threes would be beneficial to them, because I think that will offset maybe some of the finishing numbers dropping or some of the free throw numbers dropping just in terms of attempts and fouls drawn. And the way to balance that out, I think, is to take more threes. So I think they've been so efficient that even a night like tonight, shooting 55% on 33 threes, like take 37, take 40, and maybe your percentage drops, but also maybe you just make more of them with the way that you're shooting and the rhythm and the flow you're in offensively. So again, I think this is a positive. I don't even want to call it a problem, but I think that the Lakers at this point have shown that they have high level 3-point shooting, that they have several guys who are really good catch and shoot threats. And I think why not lean into it a little bit more and see if you can take 3 to 5 to 8 more threes per game and just test it out. Like, what does that look like? How does that affect the offense? And finally, takeaway number 3 is Jaxson Hayes has become a critical bench piece for the Lakers. And this is something that has been happening for weeks now, really months, going back to that stretch. I think starting around like mid to late January was when he really emerged as the team's best backup big man. And since that point, I look at the Boston game when LeBron and AD were out, and I look at tonight's game. It was 6 to 7 from the floor. All 6 field goals were dunks, but his ability to finish lobs, to catch plays in traffic and still finish, and just his cutting and his timing and his chemistry with D'Lo and with Austin and with LeBron, like those are things that the Lakers haven't really had in a big man since JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard that championship season. And I mean, really, Jackson's probably the best finisher LA has had since JaVale during that season. And entering this game, I was concerned with the Lakers' backline defense. And I don't want to give Jaxson all the credit. I think that LeBron was very engaged defensively and, disruptive. He had 2 steals. And I thought for the most part, what was playing pretty good, low man and help side defense. Rui was active and what was physical in the paint. But Jaxson held his own, and similar to Rui, his 7 rebounds, several of those were contested against Jaren Jackson Jr. and just him trying to be a presence in the paint. There were still times Jaren Jackson Jr. bulldozed. I'm just gonna say Triple J, bulldozed through Jaxson and got a couple and ones on him. And Jaxson had 5 fouls and had a couple Jackson-esque offensive fouls and just kind of running into guys and different things. So like he still makes some of those boneheaded plays, but I think his passing, he only had 1 assist, but like he has really an underrated passing ability in terms of just making reads. And he has a lot of, I feel like, hockey assists where he'll make the kick out pass and then the defender will close out on that guy. And then that guy swings the ball. And then the next player makes the 3 and Jaxson gets the hockey assist there. But I think he's just yes, the athleticism and the size and the length, they all stand out. And the jumping for the rebounds and the jumping for the lobs and the alley-oops, like that stuff, he makes a lot of highlight plays. But I think he's become a more disciplined player, and just having more reps with the Lakers ball handlers has really made him an effective offensive weapon. And he just brings an element that the Lakers don't have in terms of that size and length and athleticism outside of AD. But he's doing so many things defensively. He's putting out all these fires, and then offensively screening and rolling and posting up and isoing and just carrying such a big load on both ends that when Jaxson can play alongside him, and apparently now when Jaxson can even fill in for him, he can hold his own. And I look at it where Jaxson was +6 in his 31 minutes, and the Lakers got absolutely shredded in the minutes that Harry Giles was in there just for 4 minutes. Like, it made that big of a difference going from Jaxson Hayes to Harry Giles. And that probably says more about Harry Giles and his NBA future and just some of his limitations than it does about Jaxson. But the fact that the Lakers weren't giving up a layup line with Jaxson on the floor, and that I think for the most part, he was in a lot of the right spots and played a smart defensive game, even if he wasn't blocking all these shots or altering all these shots or still was in foul trouble. Like, I just think that even if Christian Wood hadn't had surgery and was coming back, like, I think Jaxson has earned that backup center spot. And there will be some matchups that test him. I look at the Denver matchup. I look at Sacramento. Like, those are just bad matchups for the Lakers in general. But I also think not great matchups for Jaxson in particular, just given the heft and the bulk and the strength of Nikola Jokic and Domantas Sabonis, and the way that they're able to disrupt and bother AD. AD is much stronger and just physically imposing than Jaxson is. So Jaxson, like, the one thing is he will get pushed around in the paint and he's flailing and kind of falling around a lot. But aside from that, like, I just think he's become a sneakily critical piece for the Lakers. And as they start shrinking the rotation and looking at a potential 8.5 man rotation as the season winds down and the play-in approaches and potentially the playoffs approach, I think Jaxson should be in the rotation, barring, again, just a terrible matchup for him. But he's starting to become matchup proof to an extent. And I've just been really impressed with how well he's been playing over the last few weeks and really last couple of months. But that'll do it for tonight's episode. Thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this show on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, drop a comment and a like. And if you enjoyed this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back on Friday with episode 8 of Buha's Block and potentially a live stream. I'm looking at live streaming at some point this weekend, either Friday or Sunday. I'm leaning towards Friday. So be on the lookout for that. But again, thank you so much. I'll talk to you then.